Hey everybody, welcome back to Peachy Disc Golf. Today we are going to be wrapping up the What's Been in My Bag series that I started at the end of the 2023 season, and we're going to go over the discs that I've been using in my bag here at the start of the 2024 season. So let's jump right into it. Alright, well today is March 9th, the last day before daylight savings time finally kicks in. I am so excited to be able to fit some disc golf in after work. And also today I just finished up my very first sanctioned tournament here for the 2024 season. So I thought now is as good of a time as any to sort of talk about the changes that I've made with my bag. If you haven't yet, at the end of the season last year in 2023, I did do a what was in my bag for my last tournament, and I was talking about how I, was changing bags. I switched to a smaller Squatch Lore bag, less discs, tried to streamline everything a bit, and I talked about what I was using in the bag at that time, but I mentioned that I was planning on doing some big changes to the bag, and I will say, like, there are definitely less changes than I expected, which I guess makes sense because there are some discs that I just love and could not get rid of, but I did make some pretty big changes. So in this video, we are going to talk about those. And definitely check out that first video though, so that way you can sort of get an idea of what I think of the bag. I did also do a review of the Squatch Lore bag and how it compares to my old bag, the Squatch Legend, the 2.0. And yeah, definitely check those videos out. But in this video, we're going to try to keep it a little bit shorter. We're going to mainly talk about the discs that I have changed my opinions on, some of the changes that I made, and sort of also give a little bit of reasoning for why I kept some of the discs that I did as well. So we're going to start off here in the top of the bag in the putter pocket. So I have 7 different types of putters up here. For a long time, had been loving these PA3s, and over the past like couple of months, like pretty much November to now, I have just not been confident with my putting, and a lot of times I found myself coming up short. And I know that PA3s are known for not being glidey. Like, that is one of their selling features, is you can really fully commit to a putt because they do not have as much glide as some other putters, and because of that, if you don't fully commit to the putt, it does come up short. So I was really tempted to go with something a little bit glidier because I was finding myself coming up short a lot with the PA3s, but I decided to stick with it. The 300 plastic feels great. It's a really nice depth. It just feels great in the hand. And I just couldn't find a disc that was quite as comfortable that I've liked yet, that has more glide. And honestly, I was finding that, like, over this off season, my putt just got really mechanical. Like, I didn't feel like I was having a nice flowy putt. In this tournament here at DeKalb Memorial, I didn't play very well. I shot +2, which honestly isn't that bad of a score. I did play above my rating, which is nice, but putting was not my weakness during this tournament. There were a couple of really wooded technical holes, and I just shanked so many of those drives. But putting actually felt pretty solid for anything. Like, I had a good circle 2 make, straddle putt even, and just a nice little flick with the PA3, and it stayed in the air nice. It did hold the nice glide for me just enough, got to the basket. So honestly, the PA3s are great putters for me. I just was not getting into a good rhythm, and it's probably because here in the off season, I did not do a lot of putting practice. If I get into a good rhythm, I'm getting great releases with the PA3s. They oftentimes come out nice and straight. I did switch to more of like a hyzer style putt as well towards the end of the last season. And even with hyzer, I'm able to get like enough spin on it where it just still carries nice and straight. Even like from circle 2, I'm able to get like a nice straight putt even with a little hyzer release. So I'm sticking with the PA3s for now. A couple of discs staying the same are going to be the PA5 as my understable throwing putter. Still love this disc. I can throw it nice on a little bit of hyzer. It'll flip up, turn a little bit to the right, or it's really great for little turnover shots as well. And the A3 I'm still using as my super overstable approach disc, and also the A5 as my decently stable approach disc. So those discs are all staying the same. We won't go into too much of those. Again, check out that first video where I sort of talk about some of these discs in a little more detail. But I do have 2 new putters in the bag, very new additions. These are actually brand new releases. I put an Envy back in the bag. Right now I'm using the Eagle McMahon Rebirth Envy. I just did a review video about this, so you can check that video out if you like. But honestly, I might actually put my soft Neutron Envy back in just to have a nice little softer landing with that soft Neutron plastic. But really, the Envy is a great disc. Something that I learned with the Envy is that I can throw this full power and get just about as much distance as my mid-ranges. So we're gonna get into that a little bit when we get into the mid-ranges in just a second here, but I really like the Envy. It's not quite as overstable as my A5. I can actually get it to go pretty straight, but just a little bit of reliable fade at the end. So I've really been enjoying that. And my new straight throwing putter that I'm using is this Cosmic Fury 2, Kyle Klein's newest signature series disc with Discmania. In the tournament, I actually had a sick, like 100 and some foot throw in with the Cosmic Fury 2, just a nice little hyzer standstill release, and it was tracking towards the basket the entire way. I was like, that actually might go in. And sure enough, it hit right dead center in the chains. This disc is just so comfortable. It's very neutral. If I am able to keep it nice and flat or just a little bit of hyzer, it's gonna carry nice and straight for a long way. Decent glide. I do think it's a little bit less overstable than the Cosmic Fury 1. So that is actually why I went with this. I wanted something nice and neutral that'll just carry nice and straight. So this has been a great disc. I really enjoyed throwing this. This was the first tournament I used this disc, and I really enjoyed how the Cosmic Fury 2 flew. All right, so as I mentioned, the Envy, because of how far it can go, even with being a throwing putter, the mid-ranges are probably the disc slot that I am most uncertain about as staying the same throughout the course of the season. So before I was using 5 or 6 mid-ranges, and I've parsed that down to 4, and I'm considering maybe even switching one of these out or even removing one of these, but we'll see how that goes as the season progresses. But for now, we're going with 4 mid-ranges here. The most overstable mid-range I have is the Pyro. I actually had taken this disc out of the bag for a while. I was using a Matrix as my most overstable mid-range, but I wanted something a little bit beefier. It's a great shape for forehands for me. I actually threw a forehand, maybe my first tournament forehand, probably not. It actually flew very nicely. It's very overstable, and so as long as I keep it nice and flat or just a little bit of anhyzer, it's gonna have a nice straight carry, but then a very reliable fade. Then, so the biggest change that I have is that I took the Matrix and I took the Hex out of the bag. And I sort of touch on this when I did my review of the Rebirth Envy. Again, check that video out because I was able to throw this Envy pretty much just as far as both of those discs. So I was like, maybe I don't need as many mid-ranges as I do. I took out the Hex and I took out the Matrix and I replaced it with the Prodigy Archive. This is a disc I'm not sure is going to stay in the bag, but I just love the way that this test run plastic feels that they've been putting out in the Prodigy subscription boxes. I actually have in the box, they have like 2 more test run plastics that both feel amazing. So I'm really excited to try those out. Archive feels great in the hand. To me, the profile looks very similar to a Rock 3, which I also find very comfortable. I was actually toying with maybe putting the Rock 3 in my bag instead of the Archive, and that actually is something that I am going to test throughout like the next couple of weeks probably to iron out my mid-range slot. But the Archive just has really nice glide. It goes nice and far. It's not super crazy overstable. Like I would not use this as my overstable mid-range by any means. It's a 5502, I believe. I really do like the Archive. I might switch it out for like a Rock 3 or something, or maybe I want to have something a little bit straighter even, in which case I would either put a Hex back in the bag, or I just got a new M4 in 500 plastic. I might put that back in the bag. We'll see. I'm going to be doing a little bit of testing here and there, but as of right now, I did enjoy throwing the Archive. It has a nice flight, but we'll see if it stays in the bag for now. These mid-ranges are sort of the most up for changing, in my opinion. Now, one mid-range that I don't think is going to be coming out of the bag anytime soon is this Detour from James Conrad. I love throwing this disc. I can just throw it on a little bit of hyzer. It's going to pop up, and it is just a nice straight laser beam. So this is sort of my go-to if I need something nice and straight. And then the other mid-range that I have that might come out of the bag, honestly, because of the Detour, is I've been using an uplink as my understable mid-range, where if I need something to turn way over to the right. But honestly, I find that I'm able to get similar distances with both the PA5 and the uplink. So because of that, I actually might take the uplink out of the bag. And also, I'm able to get decent turnovers if I just put enough anhyzer with the Detour as well. So we'll see. I haven't fully decided on that yet as well, but if I do, the uplink is probably another mid-range that might come out. And again, that either is going to make room for a straighter mid-range like the M4 or the Hex, or could make room for more drivers. All right, so fairway drivers have had a good bit of mix-up as well. So before I was rocking all 3 of the like 6.5 speed fairways from MVP and Axiom, I was using the resistor, the servo, and the crave. I took out the resistor and I took out the servo. And what I'm actually using instead, I got 3 fairways here. I'm using 2 craves. So I have this heavyweight 172 gram crave and this lighter like 163 gram crave. This newer one, this 163 gram, is replacing the one that I lost when I was at Lula Disc House on the chicken coop hole. I threw it into the roof and it disappeared, and I loved that crave and I was so sad. And I was like, man, I don't have a crave that's nice and flippy anymore. This one right out of the box has been perfect. I can throw it on hyzer, it's gonna flip up the flat, carry nice and straight, maybe drift off a little bit to the right, but not too much. I've been loving this disc. I had a pretty good number of great shots in the tournament with this crave, and also with this crave. So this heavier weight crave, I mentioned it in my Chattahoochee Challenge video for February. This crave, for some reason, is a lot more overstable than any other crave. I've even had Bowie throw it because he has better arm speed and spin than me, and he says he thinks that this crave is more overstable than his resistor even. So because of that, I was like, I honestly think the same thing. My resistor tends to go a little straight with a little bit of gentle fade at the end. It doesn't really feel like a 3.5 fade to me anymore. So I was like, you know what? I am gonna put this crave back in the bag because it feels the same as this crave, but it is more overstable. So I find that these 2 discs are actually great complements for each other. So that's what I went with. And then to sort of round out, I've also put the Vela back in the bag, Calvin Heimberg's signature disc from Millennium Discs. I find that this sort of has a little bit more stability than even this heavier weight crave. It has and it sort of gives me a little bit of like flip up as well if I get a nice release on it. So I really like the Vela. I do find sometimes that there is a little bit of overlap with these 2 discs. One of them might come out, and by one of them, it would be the Vela. I love this crave. But as of right now, I enjoy both of them. I do find that they have different purposes. Like I said, this one does feel like it has a little bit more fade at the end, so I do use it as my more overstable fairway. So we'll see if there's any changes there, but overall I've been pretty happy with this so far. All right, so I got 3 8-speeds in the bag. I do have a new Bear in the bag. This is one I got while I was on a trip to Japan, but it is still a Bear. It's just in gold plastic. It might be a tick less overstable than my Tournament Orbit Bear or my VIP Ice Bear, but it still has a very reliable fade at the end. I'm keeping the F3 in the bag right now. I had some pretty good throws with this disc as well. It just does carry nice and straight, a nice little gentle fade at the end as well. And if I really get a move on it, it does have a -2 turn, and I am able to see that. So I've really been enjoying this. And I'm keeping the F7 as my like super understable fairway driver. I can put this on like a good bit of hyzer and it's still gonna flip up and ride to the right. So this is like sort of my go-to hyzer flip fairway. Really enjoying this one, so not taking this out yet either. All right, moving on to 9-speeds, no changes really. I'm keeping the Discraft Undertaker as my like laser straight fairway driver. This thing is just so beat in now, I can just put it nice and flat. It'll carry straight pretty much the whole way. Sometimes this disc is getting a little bit touchy for me. If I put a little bit of anhyzer on it even, it will carry off to the right and sort of hold that anhyzer a long way. But also if I don't put enough speed on it, it does have that 2 fade, and that does show up. So it's a disc that I pretty much always am throwing full power. Putting it on a little bit of hyzer, it'll flip up the flat and then just carry nice and straight the entire way. So Undertaker is a disc that I've really been enjoying. We'll see though. If I hit too many more trees, this disc is gonna have to come out, I'm pretty sure. I really like the Undertaker. It just feels really nice in the hand, and I can't say no to like the way that this Throw Joe's die looks as well. It just is a beautiful, beautiful disc. And I'm also still bagging the Zeta's Moon. I talked a lot about this in my last video where it sort of fits a unique slot for me, where I can put it on a little bit of anhyzer. It holds that anhyzer for a long way, but it still has enough stability at the end to fight back a little bit. So it's really, really nice for S-lines. So I've still bagging the Zeta's Moon, and I don't plan on taking this one out anytime soon. I have really been loving this H3 V2 in 500 Spectrum plastic. I do find that it does a lot of times fill the same slot as my Undertaker. The biggest difference is that because this is a 10-speed disc, it does tend to fade out, but it's also like a 10-5 -1-1, whereas the Undertaker's a 9-5 -1-2. I do find that they are decently similar, but I haven't like fully fleshed that out. So there's a chance that I might try like both of them out and one of them comes out of the bag if there is a little bit too much overlap. But as of right now, what I usually use this disc for is I'll use it to throw a little bit further than the Undertaker for one thing, but also because it's at 10 speed, sometimes it just has a little bit more fade than the Undertaker as well. So if I need something a little bit more stable, I'll usually go with this, whereas if I need like a dead straight laser beam, I usually go with the Undertaker, but we'll see. Honestly, the other thing with the Undertaker, I didn't talk about this earlier, is if I have like a laser straight fairway shot, rather than going with the Undertaker, a lot of times I just reach for the Crave. Because for me, I oftentimes am able to get very similar distances with the Crave as my Undertaker. There's something about the Craves, they just go. They have a lot of distance for me, a lot of easy distance a lot of time as well. I really like the H3 V2, and because of that, I actually have a second one in the bag as well. This one is an air plastic, so it's a little bit more lightweight, and I'm able to throw this one flat. If I keep the nose down, it actually has a nice turn to the right, but I'm not 100% sure on this disc yet. I think I might try to switch this into like an orbital or something even more understable. We'll talk about that when we get into the 11 speeds, which we can go into right now. I have two 11-speed drivers. I put the Photon back in the bag, and I'm still keeping the Wave. The Wave I've talked about a lot. This is pretty much my bread and butter distance driver. I can keep it on hyzer, and it's going to flip up to flat. And if I'm able to keep the nose down, I can get a nice release on it. It's going to drift off to the right, have a nice fade back to the left, and I really am able to get great distance with the Wave. And because of that, I decided to put the Photon back in the bag, because to me, just like with a lot of the other fairway drivers with MVP and Axiom, the Photon feels very similar to the Wave. It just has a little bit more stability, so if I'm throwing into a headwind or something, I'll pull out the Photon instead and then go with the Wave on calmer days. And then the last driver that I have is the lightweight X3 in air plastic from Prodigy. This disc has a very similar flight shape to the Wave, but because it's a 12 speed, I'm able to get this a little bit further. This is definitely my furthest flying disc as of right now, but I do have to commit to throwing a full power shot, because if I don't, it does tend to fade out early because it is a 12 speed driver. I will say though that because this disc is lightweight, it is prone to turning over. So like I threw this disc on hole 18 in my tournament today. There was a little bit of a headwind. I put it on hyzer like a decent amount, but it flipped immediately over, rode way over to the right. I probably should have gone with the Photon, honestly, but I really wanted to try to get extra distance to try to get a nice little birdie to end the round. Because of that, I actually know in this Prodigy quarterly box that there's an X2 in air plastic, a little bit more overstable version of this disc. So I'm really excited to try that out. For a little while, I was using a full weight Spectrum X3, but I found that I do not get nearly as much distance. I really need that lightweight plastic in order to pump a little bit further. I'm really excited to try the X2 in air plastic. And in my first video, I mentioned that I have 3 utility discs, and those haven't changed. In my side pocket here, I have the Glitch if I need like a touchy approach without much movement, nice and straight, or I might use this on like a nice little anhyzer turnover. Still using the Glitch. If I need something super overstable for a fairway, I go with the FX2 here, and super understable, I'll use the F9. I actually used this in the tournament on hole 17 at DeKalb Memorial. I used it as a roller. This is a really easy disc to put on a roller angle, or if I need to do like a standstill and I still want to get some good distance, I can use this F9, not have to throw it super hard because it's so understable. It's just going to flip up, carry nice and straight, nice easy distance. So those are still in the bag as well. But let me know down in the comments, what do you think of my current setup? If you were making any bag changes, what changes would you make? And I'm still tinkering around here and there, and especially because one of the staples of the channel is doing review videos of new discs. I'm always tempted to switch discs out, so that'll definitely still come into play as the season progresses. But in this tournament, like I said, I did not shoot very well, but that was definitely user error. I never felt like I didn't have a disc that I needed for the shots that I wanted. So as of right now, I'm pretty happy the way that I have the bag laid out. But let me know, again, down in the comments, what do you think of my disc selection, or if you would make any changes, what would you do? That's going to be it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't, I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider subscribing to the channel. If you enjoyed watching this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and ring that notification bell so you can be notified when our next episode comes out. Until next time, guys, cheers.